Tocho sampo pa gyo trashi pa Tuche tempe trile yar ngoda Pelge drolor zampe ze parachen Palden lame shabla solvade Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timo Nishasane Karm Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timo Nish Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timonisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timonisha Sane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timo Nishasane Karm Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timo Nishasane Karm Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timo Nishas Uta Vardanya Shri Bhad Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Suma Timo Nishasane Karm Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dagi Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Anyamda Dalla Tuje Sikso So Gebe Shesan Dalla Tendo So Oyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo So Tsechi Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dejen Korlo Visu Lekshune Yila Sambe Deden Malepa Geme Lunge Drubra Chingelo Tsoni Sodan Digdun Shapetse Dunge Namke Yin So Lekshune Lapchen Tsoni Yonso Tsopata Cherani Dun Changra Chingelo Chancho Parge Ninsen Tukuntu Niu Peme Siudru Lekshune Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshishi Tungen Dela Drubra Chingelo Ba Dagelo Na Chola Chokpata Chemi Samjur Ngimbashi Chedan Timbe Dudum Malupa Beme Lungi Drubra Chinge Loba Dorna Tingne Serava Tamcheda Techi Pardo Nekab Tamchetu Rese Kyamne Lama Kelem Tukje Chingi Dala Sikso Sola Gongyab Drewe Nyamda Dachala Jetsun Lame Tuje Rab Gongne Kudan Sungi Nawa Dralmetu Nyamsu Nyongwe Kesan Tobrasho Kewa Kundu Yanda Lamada Drame Cheki Pela Longche Chin Sadan Lamgi Yenten Rabzo Dorje Change Kopa Nyur Tobe Sho Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tudan Dagi Tenyerme Chikto Chingi Alu Makyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Makyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tudan Dagi Tenyerme Chikto Chingi Alu Om Muni Maha Shakyamuni Svo Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha. Sangye Chodan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupara Shua Sangye Chodan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupara Shua Sangye Chodan Tsoge Chonam Jancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Druparasho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Very often, we have a kind of distance, or we keep ourselves distant from what we'd like and what we actually experience. Sometimes we create a kind of an idealized idea, like, oh, how wonderful it would be if I did this, or if I was like this, and then which is quite far from our reality. Oh, how wonderful it would be if I could meditate every day, or it would be wonderful if I were able to do this or that, or be that, this. And on one side, it's good. To be able to desire something, to dream about something that is beyond what we actually are. But on the other side, we should observe that it at the end of the day, we do what we want. We put energy in what we think is important for us. In other words, we make our own priorities. And it's for this reason that, generally speaking, it's said there are three things that push us to do what we do. Three main forces that push us to take decisions and to do the things that we do in our lives. We do things or because by doing that we avoid something that would hurt us. We avoid, let's say, a kind of punishment. That's not the right word, but let's say a negative result. Or because by doing that we obtain something positive, something that we like. Or because there's a kind of moral reasoning behind it. So the incentives to do things, either because also when we, in any context, from religion to government laws, to make someone to do something, the positive incentive or there's the positive incentive, the negative incentive, or moral incentive. If you do this, you'll get this prize. If you do that instead, you'll be punished in this way. And you should, or for a moral reason, you should do this, that, and the other. So if we look in our own lives, these are the three forces that push us when we are in front of a choice. Very often, there's the thought, okay, I'm going to do this. What am I going to get in return? Oh, but if I do that, there's that negative result, and so I don't want to do that anymore. Or if I do that, then I'll have this positive result. So I should do it. I must do it. Or the moral aspect. Okay. I was told that this is the right thing to do. This is what I should do. And in front of this same attitude, there's a verse from Shantideva, this very important master from the 11th century. Sorry, not the 11th. It was before, even then, about 1,500 years ago. And he said, in the Bodhisattva Charavatara, he says, the guide, without suffering, there cannot be there is no renunciation. There can't be this determination to get renunciation's not the correct translation. It's this certainty of emerging. So have you ever seen someone who's not well? A classic example, someone who has some kind of addiction to alcohol or drugs or the cell phone, whatever it is. And we see that the person has this addiction and isn't well. You try to say something, but it's difficult for that person to get over that addiction. If he doesn't actually acknowledge being addicted. The first step to get out of a difficult situation is to recognize that that situation isn't beneficial, that person isn't well. Then if someone says, okay, no, this is not right, and then at that point I can direct myself towards something different. But as long as I think where I am is fine and there's no problem, then it's going to be difficult for me to put any effort into getting out of that situation. So, the correct diagnosis, seeing the problem, highlighting the conflict or the sickness, the cause of the problem is wonderful. It's very important. But what is as important is that once we've highlighted highlighted the sickness, then we need to put energy into the healing. Once you see that there's a conflict between two people, at that point we need to put energy into resolving. We need to put energy into harmony, into union, in love, respect, and gratitude, and no longer energy into the conflict itself. Once you've highlighted the sickness, then we need to put energy into health, into healing, the opposite. But there's that first step of recognizing what is not well, to see the shadow, so that you can direct the light well. And in this, in our lives, it's very important to ask what our shadows are. What is the sickness that we want to be free from? What are the aspects of my life that I don't want to continue? What do I want to better? Not with an attitude of, or like feeling, self-blame, or, with this attitude of welcoming ourselves and directing ourselves to what we want. Because when I know that I'm sick, I can then direct myself towards a healing. So this is a very important step. When we talk about refuge, the first thing that's important for us to remember is that every day, we're always taking refuge, continuously. Taking refuge means there's something I don't want, and I think that other thing can help me. So I ask for help, to get out of what I don't want. I'm hungry, for example. I don't want to be hungry anymore, so I take refuge in food. Or I'm thirsty, I take refuge in water. I'm tired, I take refuge in sleep. When someone is very tired and says, I have to sleep, one is taking refuge in sleep. Or I need to lie down, I take refuge in my own bed. It seems really simple, but it's something that we're constantly doing, this act of taking refuge. So taking refuge is not something specific to Buddhism. What's important is recognizing what we're taking refuge from and what we're taking refuge in. If I take refuge from the cold, I'm taking refuge in a nice warm sweater, a protected house, the sun, a sweater or heat. I take refuge in something that can protect me from something that I don't want to feel anymore. And we're constantly taking refuge. The problem is when we take refuge in things that can't actually concede us refuge. Like, for example, if I say I'm really thirsty, I take refuge. I take refuge in a drink that will not eliminate my thirst, like salty water. Once someone told me that in Coca-Cola there's the same amount of sugar as there is salt. Because the more you drink, the more you want to drink. It doesn't quench your thirst because there's so much salt in it. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the products. But just imagine drinking water with salt to try to quench your thirst. What would happen? We're even more thirsty. It doesn't resolve that. So if we take refuge into something that doesn't have the characteristics to be able to help us get out of that other thing, then we need to look for something else. So in taking refuge, there are two fundamental attitudes. We should have clarity about what we want to avoid, what we're taking refuge from. And to avoid that thing, what am I taking refuge in? These two aspects, and there's a traditional term. I don't really like it. I don't like how it's translated. In our context, it's not great, but it does give the idea. It said that the two causes of refuge are fear and faith. And let's just explain better what that means. Fear means, I'm afraid of being hungry. I start feeling hungry and I don't want to feel hunger. I want to avoid being hungry. I don't like being hungry. I don't want to feel hungry. So I have this so-called fear of being hungry. It's not that emotion of being afraid of fear, but it's recognizing that that's something I need to avoid as much as I can. So being afraid, having fear, is about recognizing what I don't want. I don't want my thirst to get worse, for example. Faith, the definition of faith is believing in the existence, the abilities, and the characteristics, the qualities of something. So I'm thirsty. I don't want to feel thirsty anymore. I'm afraid of being thirsty. I have faith in water. I know that water exists. I believe in water. I believe that water has the characteristics of being clean and clear, and has its potential qualities of being able to quench my thirst and to clean, etc. So I go towards the water. If I'm in the middle of the desert, and I walk towards the water. This reminds me of the time where I was in India. Once a year, the departments within the monastery where I lived, once a year we would have a picnic. We would go, there was a holy mountain in front of the monastery, and I could see it from my bedroom window. It was a kind of, so we would go, we'd have a picnic on this mountaintop, and there were many, many, many steps to get up. And at a certain point, we would have a ceremony, and then halfway up, we would have a picnic. The Tibetans are so good at doing this. They would bring everything to eat and also for playing, etc. And one day I was there, and at a certain point, it was very, very hot, and I was very thirsty. I had no more water, and the only way to get water was going back and walking about 300 huge steps, and then coming, and then I'd have to come back up. And I had this kind of this struggle.